Hey everybody, welcome to Inside the Itinerary. Today we're going to be talking about Uganda, and we're going to be speaking with someone who is uniquely qualified to speak about Uganda, Beth Rowan. She's a travel advisor and the owner of Tapestry Travel. Let's jump right in. Beth, tell me about your unique relationship with Uganda.
So I first went to Uganda, I don't know how many years ago now. I went with a group of women, and we originally went for gorillas, ended up staying, I think, for 10 days, and fell deeply in love with the country. And then I've been back, still love it. And then about a year and a half ago, I was introduced to the Ugandan ambassador to the US. And her and I hit it off. And I have been working with the Ugandan embassy and their tourism board to help craft, their marketing messages to U.S. travel advisors. I speak on her behalf around the country to travel advisors as well as, political figures, et cetera. So about Uganda, the opportunities there, and how to position it, and what are the best clients to send there.
Okay, well let's start right there. How do you position it and who are the best clients to send there?
I think it's important to position Uganda correctly because so most people know, if they know Uganda, they know Uganda as one of the two countries where currently you can trek for mountain gorillas, Rwanda and Uganda. And Uganda is it's not a luxury experience. They do have some incredible accommodations there, but the way I'd put it is it's a very genuine, heartfelt style of hospitality. So they're working very hard now on improving their tourism infrastructure. But if somebody has a client that's not quite adventurous and they want that sort of high level Singita type of experience, Uganda is not the place to send them to. People have to be, willing to roll with the punches on bumpy roads a little bit and things like that. So, good clients are ones that are adventurous. Good clients are ones that possibly have done an African safari experience before, but want something different. Yeah. So, yeah, position it well, for the client, and they will be very happy. I always say the biggest surprise in Uganda is the genuine warmth and compassion of the people there. Clients that really sort of want that kind of, you know, come back with, WhatsApp full of your new Ugandan friends.
I was going to ask you, what are the common mistakes when planning a trip to Uganda? You just mentioned the first one is having going there with the wrong level of expectation as far as what it's like luxury versus non-luxury. Are there other common mistakes or pitfalls that you've seen in planning for Uganda?
I think, Uganda, like Rwanda, often gets added as, tacked on to the beginning or the end of another itinerary. But unlike Rwanda, Uganda really is a big five experience. And I think that's one thing that people don't realize. They have all the big five, plus they have a lot of very unique experiences that you can't get elsewhere. So, for instance, in Queen Elizabeth Park, there's a big channel there called Gazinga Channel, and you can go on a boat. And I always say, we've all been in the situation where, we come up on a body of water and elephants are there, and we're looking at the behinds of a whole bunch of elephants. Where on a boat, you're looking at them drinking and playing and bathing in the water directly into their faces. So I think the biggest thing is open people up to seeing more of Uganda than just the gorilla trekking experience. I think that's a big one.
Right. And of course, the gorilla trekking is sort of unique to that area. For folks that are going to or have been to other areas in Southern Africa, South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, etc., what other unique experiences are there in Uganda that they won't really get to see or experience in those other areas?
So one of my absolute favorites, and I tell travel advisors this all the time, if a client thinks that they just want to go for gorilla trekking, they should really talk to their clients about going up to Chibali. It's spelled with a K but pronounced with a CH, for the chimp trekking experience. It is a friend of mine said it really well. The gorilla experience stops your heart, and the chimp experience gets it racing. It is so much fun. The chimps are. It's very fast paced. They're very active, unlike the gorillas. They're very active and they're very vocal. And a good guide will help you understand chimp politics, and you watch this whole political system play out right in front of you. So yeah, do not miss the chimps. They're my favorite part. Nothing against the gorillas, but I just love the chimp experience.
Hmm. So, what's the ideal number of days, if there is such a thing, to stay in Uganda, and what's a typical itinerary? Um, you know, uh, what's a best idea of an itinerary?
Yeah, so I mean, if you ha excuse me, if you have 10 or 12 days, that would be perfect because then you can have the big five. So everybody flies into Entebbe, which is next to Kampala. So the international airport is in Entebbe, but Kampala is their capital. Um, and I recommend a couple of days in Kampala. Oftentimes, people will just overnight there and then immediately leave. But Uganda has a very deep and rich history. For the gray hairs in the room, like me, we remember part of that history under Idi Amin, but their history is, much deeper and longer than that. And Kampala is the place where you can learn that, and be able to experience, with them um, their tribal beliefs and their rich history, which really sets the stage for the rest of the trip. So I suggest that people do spend a couple of days in Kampala. And then you can go all the way up to the top, Murchison Falls, where the Nile goes from a very, very wide expanse to a very, very narrow expanse. Powerful, powerful waterfall. Also, Murchison is their largest national park, so it's just teeming with animals and Big Five. It's beautiful. It's my favorite park. Then you could head down to Chibali to do the chimp experience. And from Chibali sits sort of at the top of Queen Elizabeth Park. Bwindi sits at the bottom. So we usually recommend you fly a bush plane from Murchison down to Chibali, but then you'll drive because you'll get to experience Queen Elizabeth, which is birders' paradise. It also has the tree climbing lions, which are some of the few lions in the world that you can see them, just sort of hanging out in the trees. So you drive your way through, and every drive is a game drive. Take time at the Kazinga Channel, and then head down to Bwindi, where you can do gorilla trekking.
Great.
Um,
And now, are there any experiences that you know that travelers always want to do that you actually steer them away from because they're just really not worth it?
Um, I am not a big fan of the way they do the Batwa village. So the Batwas are a tribe that were in um, the mountains where the mountain gorillas are, and unfortunately, they were forced out of their homeland because they were, trying to save the gorillas and make it a national park and open it up to tourism, which left them, they always lived off the land. So it left them in a position where a lot of them were resorting to begging and living on the streets. And so they sort of created this village. People do live there, but I felt for me, I think Uganda has incredible cultural experiences that are really genuine. I didn't feel that way about the Batwa village.
A question that sometimes comes up in that area of the world is safety. Talk to me about safety.
So I think the most important thing is to work with somebody on the ground who is very reputable, to work with a partner. I think that's utmost importance. Uganda itself is very safe. They do not have a lot of issues. There are parts of Kampala where you don't want to be hanging out the car window with your phone, but there are parts of Madrid and New York that you don't want to do that either, right? Somebody will snatch your phone. But they don't have a lot of issues there. Unfortunately, they are bordered by a country that has some bad actors in it that has caused some trouble. I will tell you this, I had a long conversation with the Minister of Police. They are doing a lot to be able to prevent them from coming into the country. So they're aware of it, they're working hard. Why it's important to work with somebody who's reputable is, for instance, there are parts of Queen Elizabeth Park that a good, reputable guide will not have you out driving at night because that's the place where it borders their neighboring country that has some bad actors. So it's important that they understand those issues and take care of our clients.
Mm. Is there a best or worst time of year to go?
I think that there is. So they have June to September and December to February. Another thing people don't know is that Uganda actually has two rainy seasons, not one. So June to September and December to February are their dry seasons. It's not bad to go in the rainy season. The chimp trekking experience and the gorilla trekking experience are both much more difficult in the rainy season. The treks are you are trekking. You are not taking a little, mosey down the street. You are trekking. People are ahead of you with machetes, clearing the way for you to go. So when that becomes wet and muddy, it gets more difficult. So I recommend going in the dry season. Uganda sits on the equator, so it's never, an issue of cold. It's just an issue of wet.
Mm. So if people are going to pair this with another region in the area, what in your opinion is one of the best regions to put a trip together alongside Uganda?
You can actually, Uganda, there's pretty decent airlift into Uganda for most of the southern and eastern African countries. It is a part of East Africa, so probably the easiest would be Kenya or Tanzania. But it's also, it sits just a little bit north of some of the southern countries, so you can pair it with any one of them.
Right, right. So you mentioned a moment ago about trekking through the bush. Do travelers have to be concerned with snakes, mosquitoes, etc.?
No, so I've never encountered a snake there. I don't know. I don't even know if they have them, honestly. But no, you don't have to. It's not a malaria country. You are in, it's Uganda is the kind of place where if you drop a seed, it will grow. It's very lush and green. I think that was the biggest surprise when I first went. I was used to sort of the savannas of places like Kenya and Tanzania. I wasn't expecting this lush Costa Rican style, greenness. Um, so how this is also uh, a big question that I get from travel advisors to be able to talk to their clients about trekking. So trekking, what happens is they usually have easy, medium, and harder treks, and this is true in Rwanda also. So very early in the morning, the rangers go out, they sort of locate where the habituated families are, radio back, and then you will go to one of the pavilions. There's four gates in Uganda. You will go to wherever you have your permit for. You can request an easy, if like I've traveled with somebody who had a bad ankle, she requested an easy trek. The rangers that will accompany you are also really good at sort of visually putting you in the right place because there's always somebody who thinks that they're more fit than they are. And then you go off and your trek can be, I've come across gorilla families in as little as 30 minutes. I've also had to trek for more than 2 hours to come up with them. Um, then you get an hour with the family, and the way both countries respect the same permit restrictions, every gorilla family can have an encounter with one group of 8 people once per day. So you get an hour with them to watch them. And then when the hour's up, the rangers, it's not a minute more. The rangers, they follow the rules and then you trek back. It's an incredible experience. It's really amazing to look at something that shares almost the same DNA as us and just watch, watch how they interact with each other and their babies and their children. It's super, it's an incredible experience. I highly recommend it.
How close are you to the gorillas? And do the gorillas know you're watching them? And does that change their behavior at all?
It doesn't. So when we refer to them as being habituated, that means that they have spent time with humans, starting with the conservationists and rangers will habituate them. It does not change their behavior at all. Sometimes they'll get curious. You are supposed to stay about 7 or 8 feet away from them at all times. And that's really important because they share our DNA, we can also transfer bad things to them. So, like for instance, if you show up at the pavilion and you're sneezing and you have a runny nose, they will not allow you to trek because you can pass that on to a gorilla. Um, so you're not, and you have to, the rangers will make you step back. So, occasionally, like one time I was stepping back to let a mama with a baby on her back walk in front of me, but I was about 2 feet away from her because my feet were literally on the edge of a riverbank. So the rangers understand this, but they will tell you what to do. They'll tell you, where to stand, what not to do, etc. It's like any African safari guide. To me, they're like flight attendants. Number one for them is safety, so always listen to whatever your guide tells you.
And with the chimps that you mentioned before, are you able to be that close to them as well?
Yes. Yeah, it's about the same. And actually, chimps are closer in DNA to us. So the same rules apply there. More people are allowed to see the chimp families. You still only have an hour with them, but more groups per day can go there. And one little known unknown factor, something that I feel like I don't know where some of these stories came about, but there seems to be this feeling that it's easier to trek in Rwanda, and it's not. They are equally the same. If you are concerned, if you have a client that is concerned or has mobility issues, you can request ahead of time for them to be in an easy one. But both Uganda and Rwanda, you are trekking in a jungle. Usually they're mountain gorillas, so you're trekking up or down a mountain. The other thing that I hear a lot of travel advisors say to me is that there are more gorillas in Rwanda, and that's absolutely false. 46% of all the mountain gorillas in the world are in Uganda. The other 54% are split between the Democratic Republic of Congo, which you cannot go to that national park right now, and Volcanoes National Park in Rwanda. There are more habituated families in Uganda than there are in Rwanda. And because 8 people per day can visit them, that means there's more permits available in Uganda. So your chances of being able to get a permit. And one of the other things that I tell travel advisors is to recommend to their clients. So a Uganda trekking permit is $800. Rwanda is $1,500. What I tell them is that try to get the clients to consider staying an extra day and trekking twice. The reason for that is because when you trek for the first time, everything you see is behind a camera lens or a phone lens. You can't help it. You want to take pictures of all these amazing creatures. Then you go the next day and you leave all of that behind and you just sit with them and experience them. And it's to me, that's the number one wow thing that I suggest that clients do in Uganda.
Oh, that's great advice.
Yeah.
So between Rwanda and Uganda, if someone is deciding which to go to, what's the same and what's different?
So I would say Rwanda has started their tourism efforts earlier than Uganda. And part of it is, Uganda has minerals. Uganda actually has oil. Uganda has So they haven't always had to focus as much on their tourism. Rwanda made a concerted effort, I don't know how many, 20 years ago, to really focus on that part of their economy. And so they just, I would say Rwanda, the experience feels a little bit more polished. Uganda, it, it's very genuine, is the way I'd put it. But if you have a client where that Singita kind of luxury is that's something that they really want, then it's clear the choice is Rwanda. But from the gorilla trekking experience, they're almost identical.
Mhm. Okay, great. So, what else didn't I ask you before we leave today?
Um,
We covered a lot. Maybe I asked
yeah, we
everything.
did. Oh, yeah, and I would say, we talked about like what's something that um, a wow. I talked to you about what I think the wow factor for a client to recommend. The other, prepare. They're putting a lot of money right now into infrastructure, but it hasn't reached everywhere. So in the major towns and cities, roads are good, et cetera, et cetera. But once you get out of that, talk to your, DMC or tour operator that you're using to make sure that the itinerary is going to, for instance, where does a bush plane make sense when the roads aren't great instead of a long drive. So I think that's important to really get in there and understand from your tour operator or DMC's experience there what makes the most sense for your clients.
Great. Well, Beth, thank you so much for talking to us today about Uganda and a little bit about Rwanda as well. Safe and happy travels, everybody. And until next time, goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.